This was 1987. Rap hadn't even started, and by the time we did Back on the Block, 1992, it was all rap, and that.
We've all learned quite a bit about Michael Jackson, and you were mentioning him earlier. Take something like Thriller. Where exactly do you fit into those records? His catalog includes his melodies and lyrics, but there are also pieces I contributed along the way. What we really did was elevate his original ideas into something even bigger.
To my house, I met him when he was 12 at Sammy's house, when he was about 12 years old.
At one point, Michael actually visited my home. I first crossed paths with him when he was just a kid at Sammy's place. Back then, he couldn't have been more than 12 years old. I still recall watching him at the Academy Awards as a young performer, especially around the time of Ben, that unusual love story about a rat. Years later, when he turned 19 and we finally collaborated, he was acting in the project while I handled the music direction. Reluctantly, I agreed to work on the score for the film adaptation of The Wiz. Our journey really began with The Wiz. At some point, he told me he planned to sign with Epic and wanted my help choosing a producer.
It's something I always wanted to do, and it was a lot of fun working with all the greats, Sidney Lumet, Quincy Jones.
I told him straight up that it was too early to even discuss that. My focus was getting him a proper song first, since he didn't yet have a standout solo in the film. Once that was done, then we could think about everything else. Eventually, we landed on You Can't Win for the Scarecrow sequence. That moment turned out beautifully. It was a dream opportunity for me creatively. Working alongside legends like Sidney Lumet and Quincy Jones made it even better. As time went on, I began noticing just how instinctive Michael really was. He memorized everyone's lines, endured hours of makeup, and mastered every song and step. There's no doubt he was an extraordinary talent. In truth, he stood out in every possible way, from observation to influence to performance. Nothing ever slipped past him. Because of his sharp instincts, he absorbed everything I showed him. He studied greats like James Brown, Fred Astaire, and Sammy Davis Jr. Over time, I noticed a deeper maturity growing in him. That same depth showed up in the Motown era. Records like ABC and Dancing Machine proved it. Those songs were crafted by incredible producers. Still, I felt there was another level waiting to be unlocked in him. Once the film wrapped, Michael came back emotional one day. He told me Epic didn't want me involved. Their reasoning was that my sound leaned too much toward jazz. I reassured him that everything would turn out fine. Thankfully, he stood his ground and fought for it. Eventually, he made it clear he wanted me on the project. Across the board at Epic, people doubted the idea. That kind of resistance actually motivated me. You know how I am. I thrive on that challenge. All it takes is someone underestimating me to light that fire. When we first teamed up, even his family believed he had already peaked. I simply told them we'd find out soon enough. As we kept going, new ideas kept unfolding. I could hear qualities in him that hadn't been tapped into yet. There was hidden potential that could take him far beyond expectations. A key ability in this business is seeing the future before it happens.
And up to that point, Michael's most emotional moment was Ben. Every time, and so I just left it on the record to cry because it was a very real emotion.
From there, you reverse engineer the path to get there. You can recognize true talent almost immediately, within seconds of hearing them. If you're left wondering who the singer is, that's usually not a good sign. When we started the first album, Michael was constantly touring with his brothers. Because of that, he only recorded a couple of tracks. I also worked on one piece with the brothers Johnson called Get on the Floor. Michael never used profanity at all. Whenever things sounded great, we'd call it funky. But he'd jokingly correct us with his own phrase, smelly jelly.
I felt a lot of things inside that nobody had heard before. Untapped vocal equipment.
Up to that point, his most emotional performance had been Ben, so I guided him toward more personal material, like She's Out of My Life. Originally, I had that song set aside for Sinatra. Every time he recorded it, he broke down in tears. I decided to keep that emotion in the final track. That honesty helped shape Off the Wall. The album included hits like Rock With You, She's Out of My Life, and Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. At the time, it became the biggest selling black album ever. Interestingly, the same people who criticized me ended up benefiting from that success. That's just how things balance out sometimes. If you aim high and only reach half, you're still ahead. That's why I always set the bar without limits. People kept insisting Michael couldn't grow any bigger. I challenged that assumption directly. We weren't about to create something mediocre. At the same time, we knew disco had to be phased out. It was dominating everything back then. Everyone enters the studio hoping to make the biggest record ever, and yet most are shocked when it doesn't happen. The reality is, it takes relentless effort. We put in long, exhausting hours. Sometimes we'd fall asleep right on the studio floor. Other times it was the couch, wake up, mix, and repeat. Even engineers and musicians were completely drained. Still, we stayed energized and locked into the process. What sets Michael apart is his relentless pursuit of perfection. Anyone who's worked with him recognizes that immediately. He'll push you until every detail is flawless. Even when a take sounds great, he'll still ask for one more. In the end, it's about repeating the process until everything clicks exactly right.
A big reason things worked for us is that we never allowed ourselves to overthink. The entire Thriller album came together in just 8 weeks. Somehow every piece seemed to fall perfectly into place. When you step aside and let creativity flow naturally, results like that can happen. My approach was to get 9 solid tracks fully developed first. Then we'd evaluate them and identify the weaker ones. Those 4 would be replaced, which is how human nature made its way in. From there, we brought in The Lady in My Life, rewrote PYT, and added both Beat It and Human Nature. Combined with songs like Billie Jean, Wanna Be Startin' Something, and Thriller, it became unstoppable.
And that together with Billie Jean and them starting something in Thriller, it's over, because you got that magic in them.
At that point, you could feel something special running through the whole project. On top of that, MTV and Michael fueled each other's rise. That period marked the beginning of something entirely new. Back then, MTV barely gave black artists any airtime.
And Rick James, they were screaming at Motown about super freaked and all that. And so we were down in Acapulco with Steve Ross.
Think about how artists like Rick James were pushing back against that reality. We even had conversations about this while in Acapulco with Steve Ross. People kept asking what Michael's next release would be. When Billie Jean dropped, everything shifted instantly. Early on, most people didn't even understand what Thriller was about. The concept confused a lot of listeners at first. It wasn't until the video arrived that everything clicked. The production included some truly unconventional elements. Having Vincent Price deliver that eerie spoken segment was unexpected. Blending horror narration into a pop track made people pause. Then came the 14-minute video, which felt more like cinema than music. Audiences around the world embraced it like a short film from the future. I remember thinking it could become the Citizen Kane of music videos.
Like a feature film almost all around the world.
Michael, I think this is going to be the Citizen Kane of the videos. I really do. It's going to be the most revolutionary thing in the history of the videos,
Well, the videos are getting to be...
it's a new art form now, but I think this is leading the way. Beat It, and this one is leading the way.
To me, it had the potential to redefine the entire medium. Videos were already evolving into a new art form, but projects like Beat It and Thriller pushed things forward in a major way. In reality, MTV transformed the entire music industry. At the same time, Michael and MTV needed each other to succeed. Together, they elevated one another to incredible heights. Since then, the standard for music videos hasn't really changed. Artists like Britney Spears and Madonna followed that same blueprint. What we created back then became the foundation for everything after. Even over a year after release, the album's sales kept climbing. At one point, it was moving about 1.5 million copies per week. It stayed at #1 for an incredible 37 weeks. People kept asking how many copies it would ultimately sell. The estimates kept rising, 38 million, 45 million, even higher. Eventually, it became the best-selling album in music history. To this day, the exact number remains uncertain. Back then, tracking systems weren't as precise as they are now. So when you first heard playback of tracks like Billie Jean, did it feel different? Honestly, we didn't sit there thinking we had changed everything. That mindset was already part of the plan from the start. We went through hundreds of songs just to select 9. That kind of process is anything but casual. Anyone claiming they can guarantee 50 million sales is fooling themselves. The truth is, you chase the songs that move you emotionally. For me, goosebumps are the only real test. I never relied on focus groups or surveys. Quincy Jones is not just a great producer, but an incredible human being.
Quincy Jones is a wonderful person. Not only is he an incredible producer, he is a wonderful man. He is such a family person. And I love when we have made history together, and I'm thankful.
On a personal level, he's warm, family-oriented, and deeply caring. What we accomplished together is something I'll always be grateful for. At one point, though, I became concerned about Michael. Around June 1984, People magazine featured him repeatedly without interviews. Week after week, he was on the cover with no direct voice. That kind of exposure can affect anyone. If you're not grounded, success can overwhelm you. It raises questions about how you handle fame. Do you feel worthy of all that attention and wealth? Or do you start doubting yourself despite everything?
What am I going to learn from Michael, man? I don't want to be a singer and a dancer, but everything else he doesn't have, we had, So I didn't ask him about anything. We told him what songs he was going to sing. A producer has to do that.
Personally, I never saw Michael as strange. To me, he was simply unique and deeply intriguing. That individuality is what made him who he was. Given his upbringing, his behavior actually made sense. I remember visiting his home many times. There were always crowds gathered around the gates. I once asked him if that ever felt unusual. He told me it was completely normal to him. After all, he had lived that way since childhood. Because of that, his perspective on the world was different. He created his own reality through imagination. From my point of view, there was nothing odd about it. Their bond felt incredibly close. There was almost a father and son dynamic between them. That kind of connection happens naturally in creative partnerships. The relationship between a producer and an artist is unique. There's no space for ego or dishonesty in that environment. Everything has to be built on trust and respect. To truly guide an artist, you have to care about them deeply. That connection allows you to understand them without words. Michael himself was grounded and spiritual. He stayed focused and treated people with kindness. He never used his fame to intimidate others.
And beyond everything, he was genuinely fun to be around. Spending over a year in the studio with anyone is intense. Even with someone you love, that kind of time can be challenging. Spending that much time together is no small thing. Over those months, you could actually watch him evolve creatively and grasp production on a deeper level. There have been many stories suggesting it wasn't always smooth between you. You've even mentioned before that working together could be difficult at times. So did those tensions hold things back, or did they actually push creativity forward? From my perspective, I wasn't trying to learn performance skills from Michael. Singing and dancing weren't my focus anyway. What I brought to the table filled in the areas he didn't cover. Because of that, I didn't rely on him for direction. Instead, I guided him on what material to record. That's really the responsibility of a producer. You don't leave those decisions up in the air. Some people wondered if Bad was a disappointment creatively or commercially, but calling 22 million albums a failure doesn't make sense. Sure, compared to Thriller's numbers, it looks smaller, but that comparison is unrealistic. Expecting to repeat that kind of phenomenon is almost impossible. Selling 22 million copies is still extraordinary. From my experience, there's no reason to be unhappy with that. After decades in the business, I've seen what success really looks like. For all of us, it was still an incredible journey. Across 3 albums, we moved close to 100 million units.
He probably felt that I wasn't in touch with the market anymore.
At one stage, though, he may have felt I was losing touch with trends. I remember bringing Run DMC into the studio because I saw hip-hop rising. Meanwhile, he was telling Frank DeLeo that I didn't understand where music was heading. He even thought rap was fading out at the time. Ironically, this was 1987, before rap had fully exploded. By the time Back on the Block came in 1992, hip-hop had taken over. Later on, his strategy shifted toward working with major rap producers like Teddy Riley. He was ready to invest heavily to adapt to that new sound. At one point, people asked why he didn't appear on my album. The explanation was that his label president preferred he stay off it. Visiting Neverland was something unforgettable. Standing there with the king of pop felt surreal. The whole atmosphere was almost magical. People like Nastasia Kinski, Quincy Jones, and his daughter Kidada were all there. It wasn't just a casual gathering, though. The purpose was a major photo shoot for Vibe magazine. The project was important enough to have top-level oversight. Landing Maiko for that cover was a huge achievement. The final image turned out beautifully. In fact, it became one of the most striking covers we'd ever done. It revealed him as a global icon in a completely different way. As for how he was doing at that time, he seemed fine. He had settled into more of a family life. I didn't see him often anymore, but my daughter did. He even introduced his children during one visit. When asked about working with Quincy, Michael spoke highly of the experience.
What was it like working with Quincy?
Yeah.
He's very professional, very talented, and he's a musical visionary. And he's been around, as you know, a very long time.
He described him as professional, gifted, and visionary. Given Quincy's long career, that meant a lot. Michael often said he learned a great deal from him. At one point, he shared a creative philosophy. Rather than forcing music, he believed in letting it flow naturally. In his view, artists are just channels for something greater. During a phone call, there was a moment of mutual appreciation. They exchanged warm words and humor just like always. The last time I saw him was in London. He was trying to bring us together again for another album. There was even talk of involving his children in the process. Plans shifted toward possibly working in Los Angeles. Not long after, I was traveling back from overseas. Then came the shocking news during a car ride. I was told that both Farrah Fawcett and Michael Jackson had passed. The moment hit me hard. I couldn't process it.
Even days later, it still didn't feel real.
It's very hard to accept. I know I'm in a big state.
The loss felt almost impossible to comprehend. In all my thoughts, I never imagined he would go before me. Accepting it has been incredibly difficult. Part of me still refuses to believe it. At 76, I was still here, while he was gone at 50. What we shared in the 80s felt deeply connected. There was something almost spiritual about that collaboration. Losing him felt like losing a younger brother. Even now, it's hard to fully accept that he's gone. My love for him hasn't changed. Looking back at those groundbreaking albums makes everything bittersweet. Seeing what happened to him afterward was painful. Yes, it did affect me deeply. After 60 decades in the industry, I've seen how complex success can be. Fame is powerful, but also unpredictable. I'm not here to analyze it like a psychologist, but I know it can weigh heavily on a person. There were moments when I sensed something troubling beneath the surface. Even without words, you could feel that tension. He wasn't always carefree throughout his life. At times, I'm not sure he felt comfortable with himself. That might explain some of the changes he went through. Something clearly wasn't right at certain points. I used to joke with him about things like chemical treatments. He would respond with various explanations about his health. In many ways, it felt like he was trying to convince himself.
He seemed to want to transform his appearance.
Wow, this really tarnishes Michael Jackson's reputation. I mean, that's just about the worst rumor I've ever heard about him.
As for the rumor about me disliking Billie Jean, that's completely false. Anyone with ears could tell that record was a hit. I even know how that story started. There have also been claims about him copying others. People point to songs like State of Independence when making comparisons, but inspiration and theft aren't the same thing.
Anybody could hear that record's a smash. And also, I know where it came from.
Some critics took it too far, calling him greedy. There were even suggestions he should have shared credits differently. Hearing those accusations can damage his reputation. Honestly, it's one of the harshest rumors out there. After Bad, a lot of narratives started forming. In many cases, it felt driven by money. The estate and legal battles became part of the story. New releases kept appearing, but that wasn't my concern anymore. At one point, legal action was taken over royalties. The claim was about unpaid earnings from major hits. Eventually, a court awarded $9.4 million in the case. The estate pushed back, arguing the ruling was unfair. Still, none of that would exist without their original work. Those foundations were built with albums like Off the Wall and Thriller. In the end, the lawsuit wasn't about Michael personally. It was about protecting the integrity of what we created together.
Before you go, thank you for watching. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can catch more videos like this.